to another WrightStew podcast. I am Paul Stewart.
I am Brian WrightStew.
And together, we're the WrightStew podcast. So, Brian, I had a chance yesterday to do something very Raleigh, very local, the John Wall High School Basketball Invitational Tournament. Got to go see some really exciting games. Actually got to participate in this way back in the day. It was called the GlaxoSmithKline back then. So, Big Pharma was putting their fingerprint all over us kids.
Yeah.
But for the past few years, John Wall has taken over, run the tournament, sponsored it, and it was an amazing time. And I share with you some of the names and some of the people. Did you ever have a chance to play in a big tournament like that, whether it be baseball, basketball, football, in high school before you got to college?
No, not really. And if I did, I can't remember. It was never, I definitely played in some pretty cool, showcase events when I was a kid, played with Josh Hamilton back in the day in an event like that. But it's definitely different now. I mean, I wonder, Paul, is it the write-off for John Wall, or is he making money on this deal? How does that work? I mean, obviously he's made a ton of money. I didn't realize he was actually retired, or not playing.
I think he's semi-retired. I don't think he wants to be, but I don't think anybody currently wants his services. Clearly an amazing, the number one overall pick in the 2011 draft. 34 years old, which isn't old by most standards, but in the NBA is getting up there, right? So John Wall was actually there last night. So that was really cool. He kind of sat on the end of the court, had his kids around, was watching the games. And what was really cool is people were approaching him kind of throughout the night in between breaks and half times and things like that. And he was taking pictures with 100% of the people who were there. So he truly cares about this tournament. It looked like he was having a good time. The other really cool thing to see was, who was sitting beside him?
His Calipari. Who was sitting beside him?
Yeah, John Calipari. So it's actually Brad Calipari, John's son. So those two were sitting next to him. So for me growing up being a big college basketball guy, John Calipari led the Minutemen to the Final Four back in '96, and with Marcus Camby and that crew, then moved on to Kentucky. Calipari was rumored to be coming to NC State for a hot minute, but I think that was more Calipari just trying to drive his price up back in the day than NC State with Sidney Lowe, which wasn't great.
Hey, wasn't Calipari kind of doing NIL before NIL was?
Well, I think he was doing it under the table a little bit
before it was sanctioned.
Yeah. There was always rumors of Calipari doing kind of some stuff below the table or under the table.
Which I think, hey, Paulie, I think there was a lot of people doing stuff like this. I mean, so it's not really calling him out.
And I've had a chance to hear Calipari speak. Great motivational speaker.
Feels like a salesman for sure. Feels like he could convince you to go play at Kentucky.
He could move you on a timeshare. You need some oceanfront property in Arizona. He's got it for you. But obviously an amazing coach as well. Had a great run at Kentucky, and he's now at Arkansas. So that was really cool to see John Wall there, kind of giving back to the community. And then also Kevin Keats was there from NC State. John Shire was there from Duke. Hubert Davis was there from UNC. So all of the big-time local schools were there and represented and clearly watching kids play as well. So a few of the games got to see play. John Marshall, the Justice of John Marshall up in Virginia, played Westchester, all the way from California, Southern California. John Marshall featured a kid named Latrell Almond, 6'8", top junior in the country, one of the top juniors, uncommitted right now. Clearly those coaches are interested in him. Westchester had a kid named Taj Ariza. Might recognize the last name. His dad played.
I think both names, right?
Yeah, Trevor Ariza played in the NBA
for
a long
Hey, I
time.
got a question. I felt like when I was in college, just showing how things have changed. We didn't travel that much to the West Coast in general, being an NC State guy. Now you got high school kids that will travel from the West Coast to the East Coast in high school, and it just shows how much things have changed.
And one of the last games of the night was a team called the OTE Cold Hearts. So essentially, what some of these schools now, these prep academies, these IMGs and places like this, they've created their own league, their own conference for these really top tier players. So OTE played my Garner Trojans, and Garner hung with them for the first quarter. Garner didn't change their game. They're trying to go up and down, get to the rim as fast as they can, and against normal sized high school players, works really well.
Right.
But when you're trying to go to the rim and you got three guys that are 6'9", 6'10", protecting the rim,
little different story.
it changes your shot. It changes your shot trajectory. You can't get those shots off. And even I got to sit down on the floor for the second half, watching them penetrate the lane and then kick out to the corner. Those shots are still contested because those 6'9", 6'10" guys are really long.
Yeah.
And even a couple of them were tipped or blocked from the 3-point lane. Really, really proud of the Garner Trojans, watching them fight to the very end. And that's one of the really fun things about this tournament is you are getting teams from California, from New Jersey, these top teams in the country, and they're playing some local teams. So you kind of see how like, oh wow, we stack up pretty well.
Or
So
we don't.
Like I said, I played in this tournament my junior and senior year. So my junior year, it was at the old Raleigh Convention Center. So not a basketball venue, but they put a court down. And so the first game we played a local team, we won that. So the second game, we played Oak Hill Academy.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So Oak Hill.
Who was their guy then, Paulie? Who was like their guy?
So at the time, they were the number one team in the country, and we were a really good local, high school team. So they had a guy named Ron Mercer, who the next year went to Kentucky and won a national title. The couple years later, he was like the number 6 or 7 overall pick in the draft. So he was
pretty good.
So our thought process of this, so clearly their front line was 6'10", 6'9", and then Mercer was 6'8", but like kind of a point forward handling the ball sort of thing. I was one of, if not the tallest guy on our team at like 6'5.5", 6'6".
Yeah.
And so our thought process, hey, 2-3 zone, pack it in, just force them to beat us from the outside, double down, on the bigs when they got it, make them kick it back out. So we were down 25-20 at the half. I think ended up losing the game by about 20. So it wasn't
not that competitive.
But we did have, so one of the big deals with that game as well was we had a kid named Melvin Whitaker who was at Garner High School. And then he was 6'10". He was a Virginia commit, but he transferred to Oak Hill for his senior year.
Oh, so you played against him? Somebody you played with?
Yeah. So I played against him so I was on JV in 10th grade, and he was a year ahead of me. He was on varsity. So we would scrimmage. And I remember getting the ball in the post. And again, I'm 6'5.5", 6'6", not short, but he's 6'10". But could jump and super. And I remember trying to get a shot. I'm like, dude, I can't get a shot off. Everything's gonna get it blocked. So he was there as well, and it was so you knew some of his stuff, but he was really talented. Kind of a terrible story though. He ended up going to Virginia. His freshman year was playing pickup basketball against some Virginia football players. Got into a fight. He leaves and comes back with a box cutter.
That's terrible. Yeah.
Cuts a dude in the face and then goes to jail.
Oh, what a terrible idea.
Yeah. So he got out after a little bit, and I think, got it back together and ended up coaching a little bit, that sort of thing. But really just a bad.
Hey, Paul,
really
I got a question.
So,
I got a question. Hey, so when you're in that mindset, right, and you're playing against Oak Hill,
yeah.
I mean, what's kind of your thought process? Obviously, from a baseball and other competitive standpoint, you go in and think, I'm the man. I'm going to get outs. I'm going to get hits. You go up there with all the confidence in the world.
Yeah.
When you walk in against Oak Hill, are you thinking, let's keep this close, or like, are you faking it? Are you faking it, talking, chirping a little bit? What are you doing?
In baseball, I never stepped on the field and felt overmatched. I knew we were facing some good teams, but I was never. That game against Oak Hill was the only time in my life I've ever stepped on a court or a field and been like, probably don't belong here. Like this is,
I just don't want to get embarrassed. Was that
yeah,
kind of the
yeah.
thought? Yeah.
And so
There's a good crowd at this event too, right?
it was a huge, yeah, it was like sold out. There's probably like 3,000 people there, or so something like that, and it was a buzz. Like there was a vibe. Like you could feel it because like they were number one, dude. People were excited about it. And Mercer was the number one player in the country. Our coach put together a good game. I thought it was a good game plan. Hey, let's force them to beat us from the outside, use our fouls, slow it down, make it an ugly game sort of thing, which is kind of what we had to do. And we had some good players. We had a few players going to college and things like that, right, to play, but not
Not
the
that level.
not Kentucky and Virginia and all these places. So the thought process is fight, compete, battle, right? Do the things you know you can do, stay in your lane. But clearly you could see so towards the end of the game, they've kind of got the game in hand, and we're playing like the 2-3 zone. So I'm kind of the back middle of the zone, and I'm kind of looking around. I got my hands up, and I hear the crowd start to like swell a little bit.
Oh, jeez.
And I'm like,
So you
okay.
weren't really locked in.
Well,
Like,
I was locked in, but you can sense it, right? I hear it start to swell because they can see from the whole court, right, from above and from all over. And Mercer was kind of running the baseline, going up for an alley oop, and you could see it developing. And so I'm like, oh, crap. So I see out of the corner of my eye, and he's got a running start. He jumps, so I kind of just have to vertical. I leap up, and I grab his arm, but I can only get below his elbow because he's way up there. And so I grab his arm, like I'm not getting dunked on. And as I'm grabbing his arm, he's pretty big. I'm like, oh my God, he's got a big arm. Like this is a man's arm.
you remember consciously?
Yeah, I remember thinking, oh geez, this guy's strong. And I just yank his arm down, and the ball like deflects off the rim, and
They call foul.
yeah, there's only a couple minutes left. The refs didn't call a foul or anything. So, but that was yeah, my brush
Hey,
great.
hey, just so people get an idea, dude. Some of the guys that obviously it's a national tournament essentially. What are some of the guys that most people would know that have played at this tournament?
Yeah, so there's been 4 number 1 overall picks.
Wow.
In this draft, right? So John Wall, clearly, Carl Anthony Towns, DeAndre Ayton, Cade Cunningham from just a couple years ago. Right now, those 33 current NBA players.
Wow.
Who played in this tournament.
Wow.
2 current WNBA players. There is a women's portion of this tournament. And there's 148 current NCAA players. Tim Thomas played in the tournament, who went to Villanova and was really great. I mean, just great basketball players going through this thing. And
so this thing's been going on for how long?
Since 1972.
Wow.
So if you're local to Raleigh, I mean, there's still a couple of days of the tournament left. Lots of good players out there. Lots of good basketball to see. And that was the other thing that was kind of fun to see as well, was some of these were like schools, right? Towns kind of playing for each other a little bit.
Yeah, we don't see that as much anymore.
Yeah,
and then you kind of got these super teams.
Yeah,
right. Clearly, anytime. What was the Evil Hearts, Cold Hearts?
The Cold Hearts. Yeah, the Evil Hearts.
That's an interesting name in itself, right? Yeah. It doesn't like portray like modesty and humility.
No.
So anyway, it's interesting though. So you end up with these super teams playing against normal high school teams. Yeah. Part of me just don't love that, but part of me understands it too.
But
it feels like travel teams. It feels like travel teams playing like rec ball teams, and it's like it's really fair. And it's like, well,
like I said, what was cool to see was, so we played that same year. We played Oak Hill. The next game we played a team from California, and they had this kid named Olujimi Man on the team. I think he went to UCLA.
I shouldn't know.
But he was the real deal. I mean, he was scoring and all that, and we beat him. And this was supposed to be a pretty strong team, and we won. And that was like, man, that was a big deal. And then the next year we played Leesville, and then we played a team from South Miami, and they had a guy named Lucas Barnes on the team, who was just a maniac. That dude had springs in his legs, was jumping all over the place, dunking. But that was one of the few games I fouled out in high school. And I remember at the end, it was a tough game for me because they had this guy who was about my height, but was like a defensive lineman. So he probably outweighed me legitimately by like 75 pounds.
Yeah.
And he was just down there pushing me around and beating me up.
It's only so much you can take.
Yeah, and I'm fighting. I'm just fighting as hard as I can the whole game. But he's just a strong guy. I don't know what his deal was, but I'm sure he played defensive line at some college. But I remember walking off. He popped off. He said something to me. I snapped. And so I turned around, all under 180 pounds of me to his, 275 or whatever he was. I said, "What?" And I kind of went at him. He got my face. And as I'm doing, I wasn't stopping, dude. I just got in there and then.
Well, I've seen it firsthand. You can get pushed to a limit, and then it's just once the reins are off, Paul Stewart, it's kind of hard to pull you back in a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. But so I said some words and he said some. Then
you knew.
Then I walked to the bench and sat there, and there was like 30 seconds left in the game, so I was mad that we lost. And
hey, did you shake his hand after the game?
I'm sure I just stuck my hand out and pressed palms, and then moved on. I wasn't trying to. Yeah, I wasn't trying to do any of that. But yeah, dude, that was crazy. But so speaking of some things getting out of control.
Yeah,
we were at the game, so I didn't see the East Carolina NC State bowl game. Sounds like East Carolina did enough to get the win at the end, but then there was some controversy at the end.
Yeah, very much so. And so East Carolina played a really good game. Late in the game, Bailey, it looked like the NC State quarterback fumbled. They said forward progress was stopped. ECU basically did pick up off the ground, ran it in and scored. And then the referees come back and said that, hey, it was forward progress has stopped. Really changed the game. NC State is up 21-20 at that point with like a minute 34. Oh, wow. We end up punting it, and a long run from ECU running back, and goes into scores. And then Bailey for NC State eventually throws a pick, really off the hands, kind of a hard situation where he tried to hit a running back out of the backfield, goes off his head. Then ECU's just basically kneeing down. I think they ran the first play, legitimate play, and then the second play they're trying to knee it down, and it just escalates, man. And basically, I think there was a player for ECU who'd said something to one of our players at that point, couldn't handle it, and number 15 for NC State kind of chased him down and basically throws down the guy. Eventually says something, and then it just turns into a melee. It turns, bloodied eye from referee. Just really a bad look. I really don't blame East Carolina at all. It was NC State who thinks we're a lot better than ECU. Clearly, we're not. Getting beat by what we would consider little brother, and I'm sure little brother was chirping.
That's part of it.
Because ECU. They're one of these programs. It's really tough to win there now. Right, they've got so many things going against them, from an NIL collective money situation. You got NC State, who's clearly got more money, should have a better program. They got all the advantages, and then ECU goes up there and thumps you, and probably tells you about it. And it's a tough deal. I don't think for NC State. Obviously, Concepcion, who's in the portal, there was definitely some linebackers for NC State that were missing, whether for injury or maybe they're trying to get ready for the draft. And so you don't end up, unless you're in the playoff, you don't end up with the same team that you had. But either way, ECU won the game. It was a bad look at the end because NC State really didn't handle their composure. I feel like ECU was just reacting, and then it got out of control. And so And hey, Paul, they did not shake hands. The coaches at the end shook hands, but the players went their separate ways because it would have escalated more, which I thought was
good. And we saw that with all the flag planting going on at the end of the kind of rivalry week. So good job by authorities, officials, whoever it was to.
Because it could have been worse, but I think there were like 8 players ejected, 5 for NC State, 3 for ECU, which probably will affect them next year. And so
here's the exciting thing, Brian. Saturday, August 30th, opening weekend of college football. You know who's playing?
NC State, ECU at the at Carter Finley. Yeah,
at Carter Finley. So I'm sure
we may be there, maybe hosting live from the sidelines.
Maybe the WrightStew podcast is there picking fights in the parking lot. You know what I mean?
somebody's chirping at Paul. Paul can't
I don't care enough about that. So yeah, I'll be instigating. I'll just be like, hey Brian, I can't believe that guy said that to you.
Yeah, that's right.
I wouldn't take that. You graduated from here, didn't you? You got to defend your turf.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So a fun time at the John Wall tournament. So if you're Raleigh local, go check out some. There's still a day or two left of games, and then we'll continue to track the bowl games. Got some fun stuff coming up for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day coming up. So make sure you're tuning in and checking those out as well. But have a great sports day.
Awesome. Out. Go Pack.